Hey guys, MCU Collector here with a new figure review, and this time we have something different that's not even made by Hasbro. This is the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the Rebirth, or DC Rebirth, The Flash. What an awesome looking figure. Now I know you guys don't typically see DC figures being reviewed on the channel. There have been a few in the past, but I just had to get this guy because this thing just looks amazing. Those effect pieces really intrigued me. Looking at them attached to the figure as if he's running through the Speed Force, and you have the lightning kind of running off of his body. Just looks amazing, so I had to go and pick it up. I found it at Walmart this evening. It was only $15.88, so there was no way I was going to pass on that price for this figure. So I am very excited to open this up. So without further ado, let's get right to it. DC Multiverse, The Flash. Here you can see DC Rebirth, The Flash on that side. Here on the back, we actually get this awesome artwork right here from The Flash #1 in 2016 of the new 52 DC Rebirth. So here it is. Pretty awesome. Can't wait. Let's get this thing opened up. Okay, so first opening the package, we do have this figure stand here. It just says DC right there in the front. Has that little peg so you can peg his foot right into that. And then it does come with this collectible card, which is that cover of The Flash #1. Okay, and here is the Flash figure out of the package, and it looks amazing. There's some really cool things, but there's some things that I definitely don't like about the figure. So I watched Unparalleled Universe's review, and the things that he had talked about. I'm like, oh, you know, it still looks like an awesome figure. I definitely still want to get it. But he was not wrong on the things that he had touched upon. The figure looks great, looks amazing. But it definitely has some flaws. It's not a perfect figure. It's not a terrible figure by any means. It's absolutely worth the $15.88 that I got it for, or the $19.99 that you may have paid for, or even maybe the $24.99 that you paid for if you got it at GameStop. It's still a very good figure. So don't get me wrong, but it definitely has its flaws. So let's actually get this off the little stand that he's on, get the background out of the way, and let's take a look at all the things he has going on. Okay, so here's an up-close look at the Flash figure. Again, the figure just looks fantastic. Now, in terms of accessories, you saw the stand that he comes with. He also comes with these Speed Force lightning effects that are really awesome. I really like them. My biggest complaint, as you can see, they just don't port and plug into the leg and the arms all the way. More so the arms, but the legs, I just can't get them. I can't seem to get them to port in all the way, so there's a little bit of gap. So depending on the angle that you're taking photos with, it didn't really kind of come out right. Like I was trying to do this review last night, but then I got stuck taking pictures. It took me like over an hour just taking pictures, so I didn't want to keep going with the review. But that is just a little bit of a complaint of mine. But they do look really good, and you can port them on whichever leg you want to. If you wanted to switch them around, you could do that as well, and then you could turn it to whatever angle is going to fit the need of what you're looking for. So you can do it down, you can do it up, however you want to do that. We also have these smaller ones that would go on the arms, and the same thing, you can kind of position them in any way that you want. They are definitely a little bit smaller, as you can see between the two there. We have the one that goes on the back, as you can see right there, and then it's hinged. And remember, mine was warped out of the package, so it does that, which actually kind of works in some instances when you're doing it, but as you can see, they're definitely not straight. That's an easy fix, so that's not a big deal. That's just how it was placed in the package, and then it just ports right on into the back there, like so. And then again, you can position these bolts whichever way that you want to do. And then of course there is one more that ports into the foot, whichever foot you want to do. So you can have it like that. And then you can see it's kind of flat right there, so you can do something to where, you know, if he's in like a standing position getting ready to kind of run off, or that foot's still on the ground, you could do something like that. So that is actually really cool that they have stuff like that. I really like the lightning effects. It's weird that the 2-pack didn't come with those effects. I'm really weirded out by that. You think they would have come with them. Not a whole lot of paint going on with this guy. Painted eyes, painted mouth, very comic book looking. It doesn't look like a realistic figure, whereas, you know, when I look at comic figures, when you say like with the Marvel Legend, so this one has a more realistic look to it, whereas not that this doesn't look real, but it has a very comic booky look with that little grin. The way the paint is applied, it's a very different way of painting or different type of paint between like a Marvel Legends and a DC Multiverse McFarlane Toys figure. So it's just different. It's hard for me to explain, but it's a different type of paint, I would say, where it just doesn't look as good. It's very flat looking, which is better because then you don't get the shine. But in some ways, it just looks a little off to me. Maybe that's just because I'm used to Marvel Legends, so it's just kind of weird. But it has a very comic book look to it, which I think looks really good. The suit is nice. We get these little yellow bolts coming off of the emblem right there in the front, and that's kind of raised on his chest, as you can see there. And then we get a little bit of paint there on the gloves, a little bit of paint for that belt, and that's really it. The boots are all yellow, sculpted nicely. We get all this texture throughout the suit. One of my complaints, and I'm sure this is, could be a fix if I were to heat up the figure and just kind of let it rest, but because in the package the leg is all the way up like that, this soft rubber portion for his pelvis area, it allows for great movement, but then the issue is it's warped out of the package. So depending on your pose, it looks kind of funky, but that's, that can be fixed. So that's not any kind of major complaint or anything like that. So let's zoom out for the articulation, and that's really where the complaints are going to be on the figure. But again, still a great looking figure, still a really good figure, but there's some issues that we have to talk about. Okay, so Flash's articulation. So he has pretty limited movement when it comes to his neck. He can look down a fair amount and he can look up a little bit, but that kind of gets a little difficult when you're kind of moving the body forward and getting him into like running positions. He's not really looking straight out. He's kind of looking down. So I think if we could have gotten just a little bit more movement out of there, if we had like a hinge instead of a dumbbell joint, I think it definitely would have been better because you can kind of get that line of sight a little bit more, of course. You get a full rotation, of course. There's very natural head movement when it comes to pivot and things like that. So that is really good, but again, can't get him to look up. You can get the shoulder to go up that high, which is really good. You get a full rotation, of course. There is a bicep, there's a bicep swivel, but there is a butterfly joint in there. However, it's very stiff and doesn't give you a whole lot of movement. It's actually more so like kind of up and down as opposed to front and back. Well, you get some back, you don't really go a whole lot of front. So, but there's not a lot of movement. I almost really don't see the benefit of having that butterfly joint in there because it just doesn't give you a whole lot of extra range of motion in there. You have an upper bicep swivel here, which doesn't seem to really work. I mean, I'm trying to turn it, but the way it's sculpted, it's just hitting the shoulder, and you're not even getting a full twist out of there. Not that an arm twists all the way, but it is limited, so just be aware of that. My double jointed elbow, mine was very stiff out of the package. I kind of had to, kind of force it a little bit, so be careful with that. It looked like there was a little bit of paint or glue kind of stuck in that elbow, so just be aware of that. But you do get a double jointed elbow that gives you that much bend if I kind of force it a little bit. So that is actually a really good elbow joint there. Wrists swivel, and they do hinge, and they're also on a ball joint, which I'm not a fan of these type of ball joints. This one already kind of looks like the plastic is a little bit stressed out, but you do get a lot of crazy motion in the wrist with those. I'm just not the biggest fan of it. We have a diaphragm joint, so you can pivot the Flash to the side that much. You can pivot the Flash to the other side that much, which isn't a whole lot, but this lower torso is also on a ball, so full tilt is that much, full tilt is that much. There's no waist swivel, but that diaphragm joint does turn, so that's how you can get his turn movements like so. And then if you really wanted to, that lower torso could also turn as well. You just kind of have to hold on to it. Legs go out that far apart, which is really good. He can kick forward extremely high, which is great. But again, this soft rubber plastic here, it will get warped if you leave it in poses for a long time. That leg does go back, which is great. There's no thigh swivel or anything like that, but you get a little bit of turn in that leg. You get a double jointed knee, which works out really well. There's no boot swivel or anything like that. But here's another thing with the ankles. Like sometimes it's hard to just get them to stand up in a vanilla pose. Not that that's what everyone should be striving for, but I do like figures that stand up nice. So you're not really going to get a whole lot of hinge going down on that ankle unless you turn it, but then that's a broken ankle. That's not really going to work out because if you look at the design of that ankle, that boot right there hits the foot, so you're not going to hinge it down. You can hinge it up a little bit. You could hinge it up more if you were to turn it. It's just a weird design going on there. There's a full swivel, of course. There's some pivot. It's just you have to like hold that ankle ball, and then you can kind of get the pivot in there. But again, it's really weird the way it works out. So I'm just not the biggest fan of these ball joints. And then there is articulated toe. So you can get the hinge on the toe up that much, which is good when you have like running poses and get a head start. So that works out well. So the articulation, while it's good, and some of McFarlane's better stuff, the articulation points are all there. It's just limited in what they can do. So it's just kind of weird. But again, awesome looking figure, right? So continuing with articulation, because I realized I didn't do this, but you can actually get the Flash going back quite a bit, but then you can't get him going forward. Like, that's as far forward as he's going to go. So that's the biggest complaint with him. I mean, you could do it to where his legs are like this, and then you're getting him down. But again, without that neck hinge, you can't get him to look up. So that is the biggest complaint. So when getting him into running poses, that's just difficult for, you know, like a natural type of running pose. So if he's running, right? If you're doing just a quick run pose, you can't get him to look straight. Well, I guess you could a little bit in that sense. So, but this is not a very good pose, and I'm not very good at figure posing. You guys, if you look at any of my photography, any of my videos, I'm just not that great at it. But it's just kind of tough, because I think in some instances you would want that torso down a little bit more and that head looking straight up, and you just can't do that. Like if you were to do something like this, he can't look straight out. He's looking down. See, if you look at that just doesn't really work. That's the biggest complaint on the figure of an otherwise awesome figure. It's just unfortunate that it's just not quite right like that. Okay, so for a quick side-by-side size comparison, we have the new Star Wars Select Boba Fett, which is also a 7-inch scale with the McFarlane DC Multiverse Flash. You can see Boba Fett's a little bit shorter, but they do scale well together. Marvel Legends does not scale well with the DC Multiverse because a 7-inch scale versus 6-inch scale just does not work. Now, I know everyone wanted McFarlane Toys to do a 6-inch DC line so it can line up with other figure lines and whatnot. And I think for the most part, the collector line is in that 6-inch 1/12 scale. But DC and Multiverse, McFarlane Toys, they're sticking with the 7-inch scale, something that they've been doing, so it makes sense for them. And I don't think they need to scale these well with other figure lines. Yeah, you sad you can't put your Legends and DC stuff fighting together and for it to really be in scale and make sense. That is unfortunate, but I mean, they're different figure lines. They probably shouldn't really mix anyway, in a sense. So, you know, I think it's okay, but I think the 7-inch scale works really well because then you get a bigger figure that looks really good. Okay, so my final thoughts on this Flash figure. The unfortunate thing is the ab crunch, but it's still a very good figure. You can still get him into some good poses. I think just not the best poses because of that. Additional hands would have been great if we had like a fist for the left and an open hand for the right. Really would have set it off, because when you're doing the different running poses using a different leg to kind of kick off, those hands could be in different positions, so it would make sense depending on the swing. So that really would have been nice. The effect pieces are awesome. I really love that concept of how they do that. You know, even the peg holes on the figure, they aren't too jarring or anything, so it really makes sense. I really like what they did. Very innovative. Unfortunately, that 2-pack with Red Death didn't have those effects. I wonder why. You'd think they would have included that as well. But still a very solid pickup, a figure that I'm still very happy with. So I can't wait to see what more DC Multiverse figures are going to be coming out. I just ordered the Flashpoint Batman from Target this morning, so I'm excited to get that. I wanted to stay away from DC for the longest time, but I have a stack right here next to me So I'm going to be picky and choosy. I will not be a completist, so there's only certain ones that I will get. But the Flash figure just looked too awesome to pass up. But you guys let me know down in the comments below what you think of this figure. Have you picked it up? Did you find it for that $15.88 at Walmart? If you did, let me know down in the comments below. If you guys like this video, please do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and as always, thank you for watching.